The greatest performance of my life started the exact moment I walked out of that office. I sat in my car, took a few deep breaths, and tapped into every ounce of heartbreak I had felt the night before. Then, I dialed Gary's number. It only rang twice before he picked up. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice dripping with impatience. "Gary," I said, letting my voice shake and crack, "I saw the email from your lawyer. Please, do we really have to do this? Can't we just try marriage counseling?" I heard him let out a heavy sigh on the other end. "Brenda, enough. It's over. Don't make this any harder or more embarrassing than it already is. Did you look at the terms?" "I did," I sobbed. "It's just, that's a massive amount of money, Gary. Half? Is that really fair?"
"Fair," he exploded. "I gave you the best years of my life. I supported you when your mother was sick. Yes, it's fair. Look, if you sign this agreement by the weekend, I won't touch the house. You can keep it. I only want my rightful share of the liquid assets."
He didn't want the house because he couldn't sell it fast enough to pay off his bookies. He needed cash immediately. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, Gary. I just want this to end peacefully. If giving you the money makes you happy, then fine." "Good," he said, his tone instantly softening. "That's smart, Brenda. You're doing the right thing. I'll have my lawyer draw up the final settlement agreement. We'll meet next week to sign." "Okay," I said. "I love you, Gary."
He gave a brief grunt and hung up the phone.
Step 1 was complete. He thought I had surrendered. Step 2 was going to be much harder. I had to face Pamela.
2 days later, she sent me a text. "Hey, babe, haven't heard from you in forever. I'm so worried. Let's grab lunch, my treat." I met her at a little bistro we used to frequent. When I walked in, she stood up and gave me a tight hug. She smelled like expensive perfume, a brand new scent. It was probably bought on Gary's credit card.
"Oh, honey, look at you," she said softly, stepping back to inspect my face. I had intentionally skipped makeup and wore baggy clothes. "You look completely exhausted."
"I haven't slept a wink," I said, sliding into the booth. "This has been an absolute nightmare, Pam. I don't even know what's happening." "Men," Pamela shook her head and signalled the waiter. "They all go through this midlife crisis thing. This isn't your fault, Brenda. You were a good wife." The tiny pause before the word "a good" was a brilliant, subtle dig. "He wants a divorce," I told her, staring down at the menu. "He wants half the inheritance." Pamela leaned in closer, her eyes sharp. "Well, maybe you should just give it to him." "What?" I looked up, feigning utter shock. "Hear me out," she said, reaching across the table to grab my hand. Her skin felt damp and clammy. "You have so much money right now. Is fighting him really worth the stress? If you drag this into court, the lawyers are just going to take everything anyway. Just pay him off and get rid of him, Brenda. Buy your freedom. You don't want him hanging around forever, right? You want a clean break." "Gary said the exact same thing," I mumbled. "See, he's right. Write the check and put this behind you. You can start fresh. Go travel, meet someone new, someone who actually appreciates you." It took every single ounce of my willpower not to throw my iced tea right in her face. She was practically drooling at the thought of that settlement money. She was literally coaching me on how to fund her new lifestyle with my husband. "I think you're right," I said, wiping away a fake tear. "I just want him to be happy, even if it's not with me." "Exactly," Pamela beamed. "You're so strong, Brenda, so generous. That's why I love you." "Is it?" I asked, locking eyes with her. For a split second her smile froze.
"Of course. You're my best friend."
"Then I'm glad I have you," I said. "I'm planning to sign the papers next week. Gary wants to meet at Mr. Harrison's office." "Next week?" Pamela asked, unable to hide her excitement. "Wow, that's fast. That's amazing." "Yes, actually, Pamela, could you come with me?"
Me, she blinked.
"Yes. I don't think I can face him alone. Since you're a friend to both of us, maybe you could be there as a witness, or just for emotional support." Pamela hesitated. I knew what she was calculating. Being there meant she could ensure the deal went through smoothly. It meant she could celebrate with Gary immediately afterward. "Of course," she said, squeezing my hand. "I'll be right there by your side, just like always." "Thank you," I said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I drove home feeling absolutely filthy. Lying to them was necessary, but watching them manipulate me made me sick to my stomach. But the trap was set. Both of them believed I was throwing in the towel. Both of them believed the money would land in just a few days. And that was exactly when the spending spree started. Over the next few days, I monitored the joint account that Gary thought I was too stupid to check. The charges were astronomical. the Ritz-Carlton, Tiffany and Company, a deposit at a Porsche dealership. He wasn't just maxing out credit lines, he was spending an inheritance he hadn't even received yet. He was digging a hole so deep he would never be able to climb out. But the hardest part wasn't playing the part. It was the waiting. Every single day, Gary texted me, trying to speed up the timeline. Can we sign on Tuesday instead of Friday? My lawyer needs the financial disclosures now. Why isn't Mr. Harrison replying? He was panicking. The loan sharks were probably breathing down his neck. Be patient, Gary, I whispered to my phone screen. Your ruin is right around the corner. The weekend before the signing, things took an ugly turn. The mask of Gary the good guy completely slipped off. I was out in the garden, trying to distract myself by weeding the flower beds my mother had planted, when Gary's car screeched into the driveway. He slammed the door and stormed up the walkway. He looked awful. Deep dark circles under his eyes, pale, sweating. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in a week. Where's the affidavit? He shouted, before even saying hello. My lawyer says Harrison hasn't sent over the asset disclosures yet. I stood up, wiping the dirt off my gardening gloves. Mr. Harrison is thorough, Gary. He's getting it ready. Thorough? He's stalling. Gary shoved his face right into mine. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, and it was only 10 in the morning. You're stalling. Are you playing games with me, Brenda? I'm not playing games, I said, taking a step back. I told you I would sign. Why are you in such a rush? Did something happen? I asked. Nothing, he snapped, answering way too fast. I just want to move on with my life. I have plans. I have opportunities. Opportunities, I repeated. Does this have anything to do with that investment you mentioned?
None of your business, he spat. That's my money now, or it's about to be. Listen to me, Brenda. If you don't sign on Tuesday, I will make things incredibly messy for you. I know things about you. What things, I asked, genuinely confused. My life was an open book.
I'll tell the court you're mentally unstable, he sneered. I'll tell them you've been severely depressed ever since your mother passed away and that you're unfit to manage this estate. I'll file for a conservatorship. I'll freeze this money for years until you're begging for pennies. It was a bluff, and a terribly weak one at that, but it showed me exactly how low he was willing to sink. To get his hands on the cash just a few weeks early, he was completely willing to destroy my reputation. You wouldn't, I whispered, playing up the inner victim.
Just try me, he growled. I need that money, Brenda. It's what I deserve after putting up with you and your nagging mother for 15 years.
That sentence broke something inside me. He could insult me all he wanted, but insulting my mother? Tuesday, I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mr. Harrison's office, and bring Pamela. Pamela, why?
Because she's my emotional rock. Honestly, Gary, I feel like she's the only one who truly understands what you're going through right now.
He looked at me suspiciously, but his sheer desperation won out over any doubts. Fine. Tuesday. Don't be late. And bring your checkbook. He stormed off, kicking a garden gnome on his way out. I watched him leave. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It beat slowly and steadily, like a war drum. I went inside and called Mr. Harrison. He's ready, I said. He threatened me today. Did you get it on tape? Mr. Harrison asked. Yes, I said, tapping the phone in my pocket. The voice memo app had caught every single word clearly. Good girl, Mr. Harrison said. Bring it to the meeting. We might not need it to trigger the clause, but it will be excellent leverage if he tries to fight the outcome. Is everything else set up? The trap is set, Mr. Harrison confirmed. I have the confidential trust documents ready to be unsealed. I've printed out all the evidence you sent me, the photos, the debt collection letters, the credit card statements, and mounted them onto display boards. Display boards, I asked. If we're going to do this, Brenda, we're doing it with style. We're going to give them a performance they will never forget. I hung up and looked around my empty house. It felt different now. It no longer felt like a mausoleum for a failed marriage. It felt like a fortress. My fortress.
I spent the rest of Sunday preparing myself. I went to the salon and got my hair done. Not the modest bob Gary always liked, but a sharp, powerful cut. I bought a new dress. Red. The colour of power. The colour of a fresh start. I was done playing the victim. I was done being a shadow.
On Tuesday morning, the sky was dark and ominous. It was perfect. I drove to the law firm with my folder of evidence sitting in the passenger seat. I thought about Pamela and Gary, probably texting each other right now, giddy with anticipation over the millions they thought they were about to steal. They thought they were the hunters walking into a lion's den. They had no idea the lioness had been awake the whole time. And the best part, my mother had left me the keys to the cage. Go back to Monday morning, the day before the big meeting. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain, mirroring the nervous churning in my stomach. I wasn't anxious about losing Gary. That ship had sailed, caught fire, and sank a long time ago. I was anxious about the execution. A trap only works if the spring is coiled tight.
I met my private investigator, a man named Mr. Vance, at a diner 3 towns over. Mr. Harrison had recommended him. He's expensive, Harrison had said, but the man is a ghost. He will find things you didn't even know existed.
Mr. Vance didn't look like a ghost. He looked like a retired high school football coach with a thick neck, kind eyes, and a trench coat. He slid a thick binder across the formica table, right next to my untouched pancakes. "You're not going to like this, Mrs. Miller," he said gently. "It's worse than you thought." I opened the binder. The first page was a financial summary. My accountant brain locked onto the numbers instantly. "He's been funneling money to her for the past 3 years, Mr. Vance said, pointing down a highlighted column. "See these withdrawals? Consulting fees paid to a shell company called PM Designs. That's Pamela." I stared at the dates. 3 years. 3 years ago, I was working overtime during tax season just to afford a kitchen remodel. Gary told me business was slow. He told me we needed to tighten our belts. Meanwhile, he was cutting consulting checks to Pamela. 5,000 here, I whispered, tracing the line. 2,000 there. My God, Gary, a Christmas bonus. Go on, Mr. Vance nodded. Paid her car note directly. I flipped the page. Financial betrayal is terrible, but emotional betrayal is a physical blow. Mr. Vance had done his job terrifyingly well. There were photographs, not just the ones I took through windows. These were high-definition shots taken over the last 4 days with the telephoto lens. Gary and Pamela shopping for furniture. Gary looking at engagement rings, likely using a credit card under my name. But the worst one was a photo of them at a fertility clinic. I froze. The noise of the diner, the clinking silverware, the sizzling bacon, all faded into a buzzing white noise.
They're trying to have a baby, I choked out.
They went in for a consultation on Friday, Mr. Vance confirmed. Gary told the doctor he was coming into a massive inheritance that would cover the IVF treatments completely. I felt sick to my stomach. Gary and I had tried for years. We spent thousands. When nothing happened, Gary was so cold. He said, "Maybe it's for the best, Brenda. Kids are expensive." He made me feel like my body was broken, like I was defective. And now he was planning a family with my best friend, using my mother's money to fund it all. I snapped the binder shut. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness. It was pure, unadulterated fury, a cold fire that cleared my mind completely. "Is this enough?" I asked Mr. Vance. "For the clause?" "Mrs. Miller, this is a slam dunk," Vance said. "I have video of them spending consecutive nights at her place. I have the financial paper trail proving your spouse was depleting marital assets on a mistress. And I have an audio recording of them at a restaurant discussing waiting for your mother to pass." My head snapped up. "What?" "Track 4 on the flash drive," Vance said, his face grim. "Recorded 2 months before your mother passed away. They were at an Italian bistro." Gary said, "Well, you should hear it for yourself." I didn't wait. I plugged the drive into my laptop right there in the diner. I put the headphones on. Hissing. Then the clinking of glasses. Gary's voice came through. "The old lady is still hanging on, Pam. This is dragging out forever." Then came Pamela's laugh. That tinkle of a fake laugh I used to adore. "Be patient, babe. The illness moves fast. Once she's gone, Brenda will fall apart. She'll sign whatever you put in front of her. Then Cabo or Paris?" "Paris, Gary. Definitely Paris. I'm so tired of looking at her miserable face. I need an upgrade." I pulled the headphones off. I set them neatly on the table. "Old lady? That's what he called my mother. The woman who paid for his car repairs when his transmission blew. The woman who let us live in her basement for a year when Gary lost his job." "Thank you, Mr. Vance," I said, my voice rock steady. I pulled out my checkbook. "Add a 20% bonus to your fee." "Are you sure you're okay to drive?" Vance asked, a look of genuine concern on his face. "I've never been better," I said, and I meant it. Because now I didn't just have leverage, I had a total game changer. I spent the rest of the day organizing the evidence. I treated it like a tax audit. Exhibit A, the infidelity, photos, hotel receipts. Exhibit B, the financial fraud, the PM Designs checks, the debts. Exhibit C, the character assassination, the recording. I mounted them onto black foam boards just like Mr. Harrison suggested. It felt like a school science project, except the topic was the anatomy of a traitor. Later that evening, Gary came home to change his clothes. He was whistling. He actually whistled as he walked past me in the kitchen. "Big day tomorrow, Brenda," he said, grabbing a bottle of water. "You ready to sign? Let's get this over with early." I looked at him. I looked at the man I had shared a bed with for 15 years. I tried to find any trace of the man I had fallen in love with, the charming guy who bought me flowers on our first date. He was gone. Maybe he never existed at all. All I saw was a parasite in a cheap suit.
"I'm ready, Gary," I said, smiling. A real smile. You have no idea how ready I am.
"Good," he said, checking his reflection in the microwave door. "Make sure you dress decent. My lawyer will be there. Let's keep it professional."
"Oh, don't worry," I replied. "I'm dressing up for the occasion."
He didn't catch the edge in my voice. He was too busy counting his chickens before they hatched. Whistling, he walked out. I waited until his taillights disappeared. Then I went to the closet. I pushed aside the beige cardigans, the grey slacks, the modest clothes Gary preferred. I reached all the way to the back and pulled out a garment bag that hadn't been opened in years. Inside was a red dress. A sharp, deep crimson sheath dress that hugged my body perfectly. I had bought it 5 years ago for a gala, and Gary made me return it because it was too aggressive. He said it made me look like I was trying too hard. I held it up against my body in the mirror. Tomorrow, I wasn't going to be the sensible accountant anymore. Tomorrow, I was going to be the one calling the shots. And power looks good in red. The arrogance of deceitful people is truly a fascinating thing. You would think that when someone is breaking trust, and moral deception is a crime against the soul, they would keep things quiet, discreet, and careful. But Gary and Pamela were intoxicated on the illusion of a future that didn't exist. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was worried, but because my phone kept buzzing. It was Facebook notifications. Gary and Pamela thought they were clever by blocking me from seeing their direct posts. But they forgot how small our town is. They forgot about the network of mutual friends, the local gossips. My cousin Sarah sent me a screenshot at 11:30 p.m. The subject line read, "Did you see this?" It was a post from Pamela. It was visible only to close friends, but Sarah was still on that list. The photo showed Pamela's hand, sporting bright red nail polish, holding a set of keys. The background was blurry but recognizable, the entrance to the Oaks, the most exclusive gated community in our county. The caption read, "New beginnings, keys in hand. The universe rewards those who wait. Hashtag dreams come true. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag upgraded." The first comment was from Gary. "You deserve the castle, my queen." Pamela's reply, "Only because I found my king." I stared at the screen. The Oaks. The cheapest house in that development started at $800,000. They hadn't just put down a deposit. They had likely signed a contract contingent on financing. Financing, they assumed, would be wired from my bank account in less than 24 hours. They were spending money they didn't have, betting on a settlement agreement I hadn't even signed yet. It was reckless. It was foolish. And it was absolutely perfect. I clicked on Pamela's profile picture. She had updated it an hour ago. It was just her face, glowing and heavily filtered. But if you looked closely at the reflection in her oversized sunglasses, you could see Gary holding up the phone to take the picture. I saved everything. Screenshots. Saved. Backed up. When I woke up the next morning, I felt a strange sense of peace. The storm had passed. Now it was just time for the cleanup. I went to the bank at 9 a.m. The teller, Mrs. Gable, knew me well. "Morning, Brenda," she smiled. "The usual deposit?" "No, Mrs. Gable," I said. "I need a certified check."
"Oh, buying something big?"
"Paying off a debt," I said cryptically. "Actually, I need 2 checks. One for $10 and the other, well, just the one for now." I withdrew $10. A crisp, brand new $10 bill. I placed it inside an envelope. That was going to be Gary's settlement. As I walked out of the bank, I bumped into Linda from my book club. Linda was one of Pamela's shadows. She was the kind of woman who fed on drama like a vampire feeds on life. "Brenda," she called out, rushing over, her eyes scanning my face for signs of a breakdown. "Oh my gosh, honey," I heard her say. "Gary told Bob and Bob told me. A divorce? Is it true?" "It's true," I said, expressionless.
Oh, you poor thing, Linda cooed, placing a hand on my arm. With the inheritance and everything, it must be so overwhelming. Pamela is absolutely heartbroken for you. She told me she's been crying for days.
I nearly laughed out loud. Crying all the way to the bank, I thought. "Pamela is a true friend," I said, setting the trap. "She's actually coming to the settlement meeting to support me today." Linda's eyes went wide. "Really? Wow, that is so brave of her. You know, facing Gary after what he did to you."
Yes, I said. She's very brave. Listen, Linda, I have to run. Big day.
"Good luck, honey," Linda called out. "Don't let him take everything." I got in my car and checked the time. 12 p.m. The meeting was at 2 p.m. I had a text from Gary. "Don't be late. Don't cause a scene. Let's just sign the papers and get this over with." I replied, "I'll be dressed for the occasion." I drove to a scenic overlook by the river. I needed a moment of silence. I sat on the hood of my car, watching the water. I thought about my mother. I thought about the sacrifices she made. How she skimped on clothes. How she drove the same car for 20 years. How she clipped coupons just so she could leave me with a secure future. She wanted me to be safe. Gary wanted to take that safety and turn it into a midlife crisis sports car and a condo for his mistress.
He wanted to erase my mother's legacy and replace it with his own vanity.
"Not today," I whispered into the wind. I drove to the law firm. I arrived at 1:45 p.m. I parked right next to Gary's car. I noticed a new sticker on his back windshield. Lakeside Country Club member. He just couldn't wait to claim his new status. I grabbed my garment bag from the back seat. I walked into the building's restroom. I shed the grey slacks and the white blouse. I put on the red dress. It fit perfectly, smoothing over my curves and making me stand taller. I applied a layer of deep red lipstick. I stepped into my heels, the 4-inch stilettos sharp enough to puncture a tire. I looked in the mirror. The tired, grieving Brenda was gone. The woman staring back at me was fierce. She was dangerous. I walked out of the restroom, my heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. Click, 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 click. It was the sound of accountability arriving. I reached the conference room door. I could hear voices inside. Gary's loud, booming laugh. Pamela's giggling. "I'm telling you, babe," Gary was saying. "The second that check clears, we book the flights. First class. I can't wait to see the look on her face when she realizes we're together." Pamela laughed. "She's so oblivious." I placed my hand on the doorknob. Oblivious, huh? I pushed the door open. It swung wide with a soft whoosh. The laughter inside died instantly. "Sorry I'm late," I said, my voice crisp and commanding. Traffic was absolutely terrible, just like some people I know. The silence in the room was deafening. It wasn't the quiet of a library. It was the dead silence of a bomb squad watching a wire get snipped. Gary was sitting at the end of the table, or at least he had been before I walked in. Now he was half standing, his mouth slightly open. He was wearing his power suit, the navy one he wore whenever he thought he was closing a massive deal. Sitting next to him was Pamela. She wasn't dressed in what I would call friend support attire. She wore a white pantsuit. White? Like a bride. The sheer audacity of it took my breath away for a fraction of a second. But they weren't looking at my face. They were looking at the dress. The red dress. "Brenda." Gary blinked as if he wasn't sure it was me. What are you wearing?" "I dressed up for the occasion, Gary," I said, walking past him to take the seat next to Mr. Harrison. I didn't look at him. I looked at Mr. Harrison, who gave me a barely perceptible nod of approval. "You look different," Pamela said, her voice tight. She pulled her blazer tighter around her, suddenly looking very small. "Divorce gives you a certain glow, don't you think?" I flashed a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I sat down and placed the large black binder on the table. I didn't open it yet. Gary's lawyer, a sweating man named Mr. Pratt, very fitting, I thought, shuffled some papers. "Mrs. Miller, we're here to finalize the separation agreement. My client, Mr. Miller, has been very generous with his terms." "Generous," I repeated, savouring the word. An interesting choice of words. "He is willing to waive his claim to the marital home," Mr. Pratt continued in a monotone voice. "In exchange, he requests an equal split of the liquid assets held within the Miller family trust. The payout to Mr. Miller would come to approximately $1 million. Gary leaned back, recovering his composure. He smirked at me. I'm trying to be fair, Brenda. I know you love that house. It's full of your memories. I just want the cash so I can start over. Start over, I said. With Pamela? The air left the room once again. Pamela choked on her water. What did you say? Oh, drop the act, I said, thoroughly bored. I know you're sleeping together. I know about the house at the Oaks. And I know about the fertility clinic. Gary's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. That's defamation. Who told you that?
Nobody told me, Gary. I saw it with my own eyes.
You're crazy, Pamela hissed. She's losing it, Gary. I told you she was mentally unstable. Am I? I reached for my binder. Mr. Pratt, before we discuss any settlement, I think you should look at the addendum to my financial disclosure. Addendum? Mr. Pratt looked confused. We didn't receive any addendum.
I'm submitting it now. I opened the binder. I didn't pull out the photos yet. I pulled out the financial spreadsheet Mr. Vance had compiled. I slid it across the polished mahogany table. It slid smoothly, stopping right in front of Gary.
What is this? Gary sneered, picking it up. That, I said calmly, is an itemized breakdown of every single dollar you stole from our marital accounts over the past 3 years to fund Pamela's lifestyle. The car payments, the consulting fees, the jewelry, the hotel rooms. Gary's hands began to shake. He dropped the paper. This is irrelevant. Marital property. I can spend money how I want. Actually, Mr. Harrison spoke for the first time, his voice like gravel. Diverting marital funds to facilitate an extramarital affair is legally recognized as dissipation of assets. We will be deducting every cent of that $150,000 from any settlement you might be entitled to. Fine. Gary slammed his hand on the table. Deduct it. Take 150 grand out of the million. I still walk away with 850,000. I don't care. Just sign the damn papers, Brenda. He was desperate. He didn't care about the humiliation. He just wanted the check. You seem in an awful hurry, Gary, I said. Is it because of the debts? I pulled out the next layer of paper. The collection notices printed in red. The gambling debts. The markers from private lenders. I laid them out like tarot cards. The Star, DraftKings, the Tower, Quick Cash, Death, Tony the bookie. Pamela leaned over to look. Her eyes went wide. Gary, what is this? $200,000?
Shut up, Pam, Gary snapped. He was dripping sweat now. It's handled. It's all handled as soon as the check clears.
He promised you a castle, didn't he, Pamela? I asked softly. But the mortgage he took out to buy it is something he can't afford, and the down payment was borrowed from criminals, betting on a wire transfer that hasn't happened yet.
It is happening, Gary shouted, standing up. Right now. Sign the papers, Brenda, or I swear to God I will drag you through the courts for years. I will drain that trust dry with lawyer fees.
Sit down, Mr. Miller, Mr. Harrison barked. The authority in his voice dropped Gary back into his chair. You want to talk about the trust? Mr. Harrison asked, adjusting his glasses. Let's talk about the trust. I looked at Gary. I looked at Pamela. They were both terrified, but there was still a shred of hope in their eyes. They thought this was just a negotiation. They thought I was just trying to lower the payout. They had no idea the hammer had already dropped. Gary, I said, looking him dead in the eye, you filed for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences, correct? Yeah, he muttered.
And you admit, right here in front of witnesses, that you're in a romantic relationship with Pamela?
I'm not admitting anything, he mumbled. Oh, come on, I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. We're way past that. I have the photos, Gary. I have the videos. I have the recording of you calling my mother an old lady. Gary flinched. Pamela looked away.
Fine, fine, Gary yelled. Yes, I'm with her. We're in love and I filed for divorce. Are you happy now? Now give me my money.
Thank you, I said. That's all I needed. I turned to Mr. Harrison. Go ahead. Mr. Harrison opened the thick folder he had brought with him, the one tied with a red ribbon. The room fell completely silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Mr. Miller, Harrison began. You seem to have operated under the assumption that Brenda's inheritance is marital property. Typically, in a long marriage, the commingling of funds can make that a reasonable argument. Gary nodded vigorously. Exactly. She used it to pay bills.
However, Harrison continued, his voice dropping an octave, you failed to read the specific conditions of Eleanor Miller's last will and testament, specifically the fidelity clause attached to the trust.
The what? Gary asked. The poison pill, I whispered. Poison pill? Pamela echoed, her voice high and reedy. What is she talking about, Gary? Gary ignored her, his eyes locked on the paper in Mr. Harrison's hands. What clause? I read the will. It said she gets everything.
You read the summary, Mr. Harrison corrected. You never requested to read the full trust document. You were too busy asking about wire transfer limits.
Mr. Harrison slid the document across the table. He didn't slide it to Gary's lawyer. He slid it directly to Gary. Read Section 4, Paragraph C, out loud, please. Gary picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so hard the page rattled. He narrowed his eyes. In the event of a marital dissolution, he mumbled. Louder, I commanded. I want Pamela to hear this. Gary cleared his throat. In the event of a marital dissolution, should said marriage be terminated due to proven acts of infidelity by the beneficiary's spouse. He stopped. He swallowed hard. Keep reading, Mr. Harrison said. Then the conditional confidential trust shall immediately dissolve, and all principal and interest. Gary's voice dropped to a whisper. Shall transfer to Brenda Miller as her sole and separate property, free from any marital claims. Gary stopped reading. He looked up at me, his eyes wide and completely hollow with shock. There's more, I said. Read the next paragraph. The part about what happens if you try to fight it. Gary couldn't speak, so Mr. Harrison read it for him. Furthermore, should the unfaithful spouse attempt to litigate or claim any portion of said estate, the trustee is instructed to immediately liquidate all assets and donate the full balance to the Happy Tales Animal Rescue Charity. In that event, both Brenda Miller and Gary Miller shall receive nothing. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. It felt like the air had turned to concrete.
So, I said, leaning forward, resting my elbows on the table. Here's where we stand, Gary. You filed for divorce. You admitted to the affair. I have proof of the affair, which means the condition has been met.
No, Gary whispered. No, that's not legal. It's ironclad, Mr. Harrison said. I drafted it myself, and I've successfully defended this exact structure 3 times in court. You filed the papers, Mr. Miller. You triggered the clause. By your own actions, you have disqualified yourself from any portion of this inheritance. Gary looked at his lawyer. Do something. Say something. Mr. Pratt was wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. I would need to review the case law, Mr. Miller. But if this trust structure is valid, you're in a very difficult position. A difficult position, Gary screamed, standing up and kicking his chair back. I'm in a $2 million hole. I need that money. You're not getting it, Gary, I said calmly. It's mine. All of it. Every single cent. And if you try to sue me for it, if you try to argue it's marital property, I press the button. I give it all to the dogs. I would rather live in a cardboard box than let you spend my mother's money on your mistress. I turned my eyes to Pamela. She was completely pale. Her white pantsuit looked like a shroud. And you, Pamela, I said. Did you catch that? 0. He gets nothing. That house at the Oaks, he can't afford it. That ring, it's probably on a maxed-out credit card that's about to be declined. Those treatments, forget it. Pamela slowly turned her head to look at Gary. The adoration in her eyes was entirely gone, replaced by pure calculating panic. Gary, she said, her voice trembling, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you have the money. Gary stammered. Babe, we can fight this. We can sue. If you sue, the money disappears. Pamela shrieked. She just said it. Are you deaf?
She's bluffing, Gary yelled. She's not giving $2 million to a stray dog shelter.
Try me, I said. I pulled out my phone. I have the director of Happy Tales on speed dial. Want me to give him a call? I'm sure the dogs could use a new wing. My thumb hovered over the screen. I locked eyes with Gary. He looked at me. He saw the red dress. He saw the coldness in my eyes. For the first time in our entire marriage, he realized he didn't know me at all. He realized I wasn't bluffing. He slumped against the wall, completely defeated. You planned this, he whispered. You walked me right into this. You made me think I was completely powerless, I replied, standing up. I picked up my binder. But you forgot one thing, Gary. My mother always looked out for me. Have a nice life. I walked out of the room, my heels clicking sharply against the floor. I didn't look back. As I stepped out into the rain, I felt lighter than I had in years. The performance was over, and the curtain had finally fallen on them. "Oh, you think you won," I said. "My mother warned me about who you really were, Gary. She knew you were weak. She knew you were greedy. She set the trap. I just supplied the cheese." "You backstabbing snake," he spat. "That's rich coming from you," I countered. I stood up and closed the folder. "So here are your options, Gary. Option A, you sign the waiver right now, admit to the affair, and give up all claims to the inheritance. We finalize the divorce today. You walk away with nothing but your debts and your mistress. Option B, you fight me. I donate every single cent to charity. I sue you for the $150,000 you stole from our accounts, and I press charges for fraud. I will drag this out in court until you're living under a bridge in a cardboard box." I paused, letting the silence heavy up the room. Tick-tock, Gary. Loan sharks aren't exactly known for their patience. Gary turned to Pamela, his eyes practically begging. "Help me out here." But Pamela wouldn't even look at him. She was glued to her phone, probably checking if she could get her deposit back on the house they'd picked out. "Just sign it," Pamela said, her voice freezing cold. Gary blinked. "What, sign the waiver, Gary," Pamela snapped. "If you fight her, we get absolutely nothing, and you end up behind bars. If you sign, maybe we can still figure something out." "Figure something out?" Gary let out a hysterical laugh. "I owe Tony 50 grand by Friday. I don't have a job. I don't have a house." "That sounds like a personal problem," Pamela muttered, standing up and grabbing her purse. "A personal problem?" Gary's face twisted with rage. "You spent half that money. The car is yours. The jewelry is yours." "Those were gifts," Pamela said, smoothing down her skirt. "Gifts are non-refundable. You can't take them back." And just like that, the sharks started eating each other. The room erupted into pure chaos, and I just stood there at the center of the storm, watching it happen. In a strange, twisted way, it was beautiful. "Gift!" Gary roared, lunging toward Pamela. Mr. Blatt had to jump in, throwing his arms between them to keep them apart. "I ruined my life for you. I stole from my wife for you. You said we were partners." "I thought you were a man, Gary," Pamela shrieked back, her high-class persona completely shattering into pieces. "I thought you actually had money. You lied to me. You told me the inheritance was a done deal." "You were the one pushing me to file for divorce," Gary shouted. "You said to do it now before she changed her mind. This is on you." "Excuse me," Mr. Harrison interrupted, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "While this little family drama is incredibly entertaining, my client pays by the hour. Mr. Miller, are you signing the waiver, or should I dial the charity line?" Gary looked completely unhinged. He glanced at Pamela, then at me, and finally down at the paperwork. He was cornered. Broke. He knew he was completely defeated. He grabbed the pen off the table, and without even looking at me, scribbled his name so hard the paper almost tore. There. He shoved it across the desk toward Mr. Harrison. "Take it. I hope you choke on it." "Duly noted," Mr. Harrison said, stamping the document with an official seal. "The divorce will be finalized within 24 hours. You have 30 days to clear your things out of the storage unit where you moved the furniture. The locks on the house have already been changed." Gary's jaw dropped. "You changed the locks?" "Yesterday," I replied. "And I put up security cameras. Don't even think about going back there, Gary. Loan shark Tony might be waiting for you." Gary turned back to Pamela, desperate. "Pam, babe, we can go to your place. We can make this work. I'll get a job. We can sell the rings." Pamela took a step back, looking at him with pure disgust. "My place? My apartment is tiny, Gary. There's no room for a loser with no job and gambling debts. Get away from me."
She turned on her heel to leave.
"Wait," I said. "Pamela, before you go." She stopped with her hand on the doorknob, turning around to try and salvage whatever dignity she had left. "What?" "I just wanted to let you know," I said, flashing her a sweet smile. "I sent an email to your corporate office this morning." Pamela froze. You did what?" "Well, you work in human resources, right? Ethics are a pretty big part of your job description. I sent them the photos. The proof that you knowingly helped a married man skim money from marital funds. I'm pretty sure your employment contract has a standard morality clause." Pamela's face drained of all colour. "You wouldn't." "Oh, I absolutely did. And I attached the audio recording of you two laughing about my mother passing away from cancer. I think the executive board will find it very educational." "You monster!" Pamela screamed, charging at me. But Mr. Vance, the private investigator I'd hired for security, stepped right into her path. He was a literal wall of muscle. Pamela slammed right into him and bounced back. "I think it's time for you to leave," Mr. Vance said calmly. Pamela gave me one last look. Her eyes were full of hatred, but underneath that, it was pure panic. She knew her world was collapsing. She spun around and bolted out the door, her high heels clicking frantically down the hallway. That left Gary standing there completely alone. He stared at the empty doorway, then slowly turned to me. "She left me," he whispered. "She never loved you, Gary," I said, feeling a fleeting moment of pity that vanished just as quickly as it came. "She loved the lifestyle you promised her. Now that you have nothing, she's gone." "I have nothing," Gary repeated, tears streaming down his face. "Brenda, please. I messed up. It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight. Please, help me. I have nowhere to go. Tony is going to break my legs." I looked at the man who had thrown away 15 years of marriage for a fantasy. "You have your $10, I said. "What?" I reached into my purse, pulled out the envelope with the crisp new $10 bill, and slid it across the table. "Your settlement. Don't spend it all in one place." Gary just stared at the envelope. He didn't touch it. "Goodbye, Gary," I said. I turned and walked out of the conference room, passing the stunned receptionist. Stepping out into the cool afternoon air, the sun finally broke through the clouds, making the wet sidewalks glisten. I felt lighter, physically lighter. The weight of the lies, the gaslighting, and the betrayal was completely gone. I was alone, yes, but I was free, and I was wealthy. But the money wasn't even the best part. The best part was knowing my mother was looking down from somewhere up there, smiling. I looked up at the sky. "Checkmate, Mum," I whispered. "Checkmate." The conference room door clicked shut behind me, but the hallway didn't feel empty. It felt charged with energy. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from the raw adrenaline of a skydiver who had just hit the bullseye. I was heading straight for the elevators when Mr. Harrison hurried out after me, a victorious grin on his face. "Brenda, wait," he called out, holding a thick leather folder. "We're not completely done. There's one last detail your mother insisted on leaving behind, a detail she didn't want revealed until the ink on that waiver was dry."
I stopped. There was more. "Mr. Harrison, Gary just signed everything away. He's ruined. What else could there be?"
Mr. Harrison guided me into a quiet alcove by the window, away from the receptionist's prying ears. He opened the folder and pointed to a specific clause buried deep in the legal jargon of the trust. The heading read, "Inheritance Protection Agreement." "Your mother knew Gary better than you did, Brenda," Mr. Harrison said quietly. "She knew he was a manipulator. She knew that once reality hit him, he'd try to crawl back. Not out of love, but to exploit your guilt. He'd use your history, your memories, and your sympathy to try and get his hands back on your money." I nodded. He was entirely right. Gary was exactly the type of guy who would cry, beg, and claim he was starving just to get me to write him a check. And the old Brenda? The Brenda from yesterday? She might have given in. She might have handed him a few $1,000s just to make him go away. "So," Mr. Harrison continued, tapping the page, "Eleanor added this clause. It's a lockout provision. It states that if you, Brenda Miller, provide any financial assistance to Gary Miller within the next 5 years, whether it's a loan, a gift, co-signing a lease, or even buying him groceries, the entire trust will instantly lock down." "Lockdown?" I asked, stunned. "Completely frozen. The accounts will close, and you will lose access to both the principal and the interest for 12 months per violation. The funds will temporarily divert to a holding account managed by a third party in Switzerland. Essentially, if you give Gary a single dollar, you lose access to your millions." I stared at the page, and then a laugh bubbled up from my throat. It started as a chuckle, then turned into a full-on, full-body release. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. "She handcuffed me," I whispered. "She knew I'd be too soft-hearted, so she forced me to be strong." "She didn't handcuff you, Brenda," Mr. Harrison smiled, handing me the copy. "She gave you a shield. When he calls, and he will, you don't have to say no. I won't help you. You can just say, 'I can't. Mum won't let me.'" It was the ultimate safety net. Even from the grave, Eleanor was standing right between me and my toxic ex-husband, arms crossed, protecting her daughter. I held that document like a badge of honor and took the elevator down to the lobby. The moment the doors opened on the ground floor, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Gary. He hadn't even left the building yet. "Brenda, please, be reasonable. I can't leave." Pamela took the keys. She says the car is hers because it was paid from her account. A lie. We both know it was my money. I'm stranded. Can you just Venmo me $50 for an Uber? Please. I'm begging you. I looked at the message. I pictured him upstairs, sweating through his expensive suit, realizing his partner in crime had just abandoned him to save herself. $50. It was nothing. Pocket change. But I looked at the paperwork in my hand, the lockout clause. I slowly typed back, savoring every single word. "Gary, under the terms of the trust, if I send you even a penny, the entire inheritance freezes. My hands are tied. You're a smart guy. I'm sure you can walk. It's a nice day for it." I hit send and walked out to the parking lot. The sun was bright, almost blinding. I watched Pamela's car, the white Mercedes convertible I had unknowingly paid for, screech out of the garage. She didn't look back. She didn't wait for her soulmate. She was fleeing the scene. And there, standing on the sidewalk, looking small and pathetic against the towering glass facade of the law firm, was Gary. He was staring at his phone in absolute disbelief. He looked up and caught sight of me, then started sprinting over. Brenda, wait." I didn't pause. I got into my car and locked the doors. He threw himself against the passenger window, pounding on the glass. "Brenda, she took the car. She left me. I have nothing. You can't do this to me. We were married for 15 years. I put the key in the ignition, and the engine roared to life. I rolled the window down just an inch, enough to let my voice carry, but not enough for his desperate fingers to slip through. "We were married, Gary," I said coldly. "But you divorced me, remember? You wanted half. Well, you got exactly what you brought into this marriage. Nothing." "I'll sue you," he screamed, his face contorting into that ugly, angry mask I used to be so afraid of. "I'll tell everyone you set me up." "Well, go ahead," I said. Tell them. Tell them how you cheated on your wife, stole her money, planned a life with her best friend, and then got completely outsmarted by a dead woman. I'm sure it'll make a great story." I rolled the window up, shifted into drive, and pulled away. Watching him shrink in my rearview mirror, a small man waving his arms in a suit that no longer fit his reality, I felt the last tether snap. I wasn't just free, I was untouchable. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but watching two narcissists self-destruct in real time is a dish best served hot with a side of popcorn. And I didn't have to wait long for the real fallout to begin. In fact, it started before I even made it home. I got stuck at a red light about 3 blocks from the law office. To my right was a gas station, and there, right by the pumps, screaming at each other, were Pamela and Gary. Apparently Gary had chased her car down and caught up to her at the light. He was gripping the door handle of that white Mercedes. I pulled into a pharmacy parking lot across the street, lowered my sunglasses, and just watched. I'm not proud of it, but I earned that front row seat. "Open the door, Pam," Gary was shouting. People were starting to stare. "I pay for this car. It's mine." "You paid for it with her money," Pamela shrieked back through a crack in the window. "The title is in my name. Get away from me, you loser." "Loser?" Gary kicked the front tire. "This morning you were calling me your king. You said we were going to Paris. Open the door. I have nowhere to go."
"Get a life," Pamela yelled. She slammed on the gas, and the car lunged forward. Gary stumbled backward, wiping out hard onto the asphalt. The knee of his tailored suit tore right open. Pamela sped away, blowing through a red light just to escape the mess she'd helped make.
Gary just sat there on the pavement, surrounded by oil stains and garbage, looking completely shattered. He buried his face in his hands. I could have felt pity. I searched my heart for a shred of it, but all I found were memories of fertility clinic brochures and the audio of them mocking my mother. I shifted back into drive and went home. But the dominoes were just beginning to fall. Over the next week, the destruction of their lives was systematic, brutal, and entirely self-inflicted. First came the repossession. 2 days later, I was sitting in my garden having tea when a flatbed tow truck pulled up down the street. It wasn't for me, though. It was heading toward a local storage facility where Gary had smugly moved all our marital furniture in his prized silver sedan. I had tipped off the finance company about his location. Pity? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. I later heard from a friend who worked at the facility that Gary arrived just in time to see his car being hoisted onto the truck. He tried to block the driver, yelling that a wire transfer was coming any minute. The driver, a guy named Mike, who had heard every excuse in the book, just handed him a clipboard to sign and drove off. Gary was left standing in a cloud of dust, guarding a box of clothes and a set of golf clubs he could no longer afford the green fees to use.
Then came Pamela's professional ruin. The email I sent to her HR department didn't just get her fired, it made her completely unemployable in her field. Pamela worked for a conservative firm that took corporate ethics very seriously. They didn't take kindly to finding out their VP of Human Resources was helping someone skim funds and plotting to defraud a grieving family. Linda, the neighbourhood gossip, called me out of breath 3 days later.
Brenda, did you hear? Hear what, Linda? I asked, acting completely clueless while filing my nails. Pamela was escorted out of her building by security carrying a cardboard box. And get this, Jane in accounting told me they found thousands of dollars in unauthorized expenses. She'd been using the corporate card to pay for hotel rooms for her and Gary. Oh my, I said. That sounds like a serious legal issue. It's a massive issue, Linda squeaked. They're threatening to file formal charges if she doesn't pay it back immediately. She has to sell her condo, Brenda. She's putting it on the market tomorrow for cheap. She is totally wiped out. Well, I said evenly, it's funny how karma balances the books, isn't it? Finally, reality caught up with Gary. A week after the divorce was finalized, I saw Gary's mugshot on a local news site. He'd been arrested for petty theft, shoplifting. A man who, 2 weeks prior, was browsing brochures for million-dollar homes, had been caught trying to steal a sandwich and a bottle of cheap liquor from a convenience store. When the police booked him, he had a black eye and 2 broken fingers. He claimed he fell, but everyone knew the truth. His debts had caught up to him, and since he couldn't pay in cash, he paid in bruises. I stared at that mugshot. His eyes were empty, just like my mother said they'd be, but now they were also full of fear. He looked like a man who had looked into the abyss and realized he was the one who dug it. I closed my laptop. I didn't celebrate his pain, I'm no sadist, but I felt a deep sense of cosmic justice. The universe had corrected a wrong. Balance was restored. I walked into my quiet, peaceful kitchen and started making dinner for one. For the first time in 15 years, the silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. With the baggage cleared out, it was time to clean the house. And I didn't mean dusting, I meant an exorcism.
I woke up on a Saturday morning with an energy I hadn't felt since my 20s. The sun streamed through the blinds, lighting up the living room. That beige recliner, where Gary used to sit for hours ignoring me, had to go. The heavy curtains Pamela had convinced me to buy, trash. The espresso machine Gary insisted on, that required pods we couldn't afford, in the dumpster. I hired a junk removal service, and 2 big guys showed up with a truck.
What's going, ma'am? The foreman asked. Everything that doesn't bring me joy, I said, channeled with a bit of a ruthless streak. We started in the bedroom. The mattress? Gone. I wasn't sleeping on the ghost of a dead marriage. His nightstand? Out. The clothes he left behind? Wait, I told the movers. Leave the clothes for a minute. I took Gary's suits, those cheap suits he thought made him look wealthy, and dragged them out to the backyard fire pit. It was a crisp morning, perfect for a bonfire. I didn't burn them all because of the environment, but I did throw in one ugly yellow tie he wore on the day he told me I was boring. Watching that fabric curl and melt was pure therapy. It smelled like burning plastic and sweet liberation. Next was his old den. That room had been a no-fly zone for years. It was dark and always smelled like stale cigars and secrets. Clear it out, I told the movers. Down to the drywall. They hauled away the heavy desk where he hid his debts, the leather chair where he plotted with Pamela, and the mini-fridge. When the room was empty, I stood right in the middle of it. It echoed. It was just a square box with drywall and carpet. It wasn't intimidating anymore. It was a blank canvas. Paint, I whispered. I need paint. I drove to the hardware store, making sure to avoid the 1-2 towns over where Gary was rumoured to be working, and bought a few gallons. "What colour?" the clerk asked. "Bright yellow," I said. "An ocean blue." I spent the next 3 days painting. I blasted music. Loud, soulful Motown, Aretha Franklin. The kind of music Gary absolutely hated. I sang into the paint roller, danced in an old t-shirt covered in yellow and blue speckles, and transformed that dark den into a library. My library. I put up floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, bought a plush teal velvet armchair, and laid down a rug that felt like walking on a cloud. I filled the shelves with the books I used to keep packed away in boxes, because Gary said they cluttered up the house. Jane Austen, Stephen King, poetry. Right in the middle shelf, where she could see everything, I placed a framed photograph of my mother.
"Much better, isn't it, Mum?" I asked her.
The room felt warm. It felt like me. But the physical purging was only half the battle. I needed to clear out the digital ghosts, too. I sat at my new desk with a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and logged into social media. A friend request popped up from an account with no profile picture. Gary Miller. Delete. Block. I opened my email. Subject line: "Please, Brenda, just read this." From GaryMiller1980@gmail.com. Delete. Block.
Then I opened the folder labelled Evidence, the photos of the affair, the recordings, the financial spreadsheets. My mouse hovered over the trash icon. Should I keep them just in case? No. Keeping them meant holding on to the hurt. It meant letting them live rent-free in my head. I dragged the folder to the trash can and hit empty. "Are you sure you want to permanently delete these items?" "Yes." As the progress bar cleared, a physical weight lifted off my chest. I wasn't a victim anymore.
I wasn't a detective. I was just Brenda. The next day, a thick, cream-coloured envelope arrived from the corporate headquarters of Pamela's former employer. "Dear Miss Miller, we are writing to express our gratitude for bringing the financial irregularities involving Miss Pamela Stone to our attention. Your detailed documentation allowed us to recover substantial assets. Please accept the enclosed voucher as a token of our appreciation for your integrity." It was a gift card to a high-end luxury spa for $500. I burst out laughing. Pamela tried to steal my life, and in the end, she wound up footing the bill for my massage. I booked a package immediately, the Phoenix Rising treatment, because that's exactly what I was. Rising from the ashes of their betrayal with radiant skin and a beautifully painted library. The year that followed was a blur of colour, flavour and feeling. It was as if I'd been living in black and white for 15 years, and someone suddenly turned on the Technicolor. I used the inheritance wisely, investing it just like Mom would have wanted, but I set aside a little fun fund. I finally took that trip to Italy. Gary used to always say, "Why go to Italy? It's expensive and full of tourists. Let's just go to the casino instead." I went alone, but I never felt lonely. I remember sitting in a small piazza in Florence. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts and rich espresso. I was wearing a linen dress and oversized sunglasses, sipping a glass of Chianti while waiting for a plate of truffle pasta. When the waiter brought it out, I took a bite. It was rich, earthy, and perfect. It tasted exactly like freedom. I looked around at couples arguing over maps and families dragging tired kids, and I just sat there in my solitude, completely at peace. I didn't have to ask anyone what they wanted to do, worry about the budget, or apologize for simply existing. I raised my glass to the empty chair across from me. "Cheers, Brenda," I whispered. "You made it." When I got back home, I started a small consulting firm called Eleanor's Legacy. It started small, with just a few clients. Women from my community going through divorces who suspected their husbands were hiding money. I used my accounting background to sniff out hidden accounts, shell companies, and hidden assets. They started calling me the divorce detective. When you look a woman in the eyes and tell her, "You're not crazy, he's skimming money, and here's the proof," as she gives you a very specific look. It's a look of profound validation and immense relief. It was the exact same look I had when Mr. Vance handed me that first binder of evidence. Giving that power back to other women became my purpose. One afternoon, about 14 months after the divorce, I was walking out of my office building.
It was a crisp autumn day, much like the day my old life collapsed. I was distracted, checking emails on my phone, and almost bumped right into a man sweeping the sidewalk.
"Oh, excuse me," I said, stepping aside. The man froze, stopped sweeping, and looked up. It was Gary. He was wearing the uniform of a city sanitation contractor, an orange safety vest over a stained grey hoodie. He looked 10 years older. His hair was thinning, his face was lined with stress, and he was missing a tooth, likely a souvenir from his unpaid debts. We just stood there on the pavement. The man who used to check his watch in $2,000 suits just to break my spirit was now sweeping up cigarette butts in front of my office. "Brenda," he said, his voice raspy and rough. I looked at him, then down at the broom in his hand. I thought I'd feel triumphant or want to gloat, but I didn't. I just felt distant, like I was looking at a stranger I used to know in a past life. "Hello, Gary," I said politely. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting to my designer bag, then up to the sign on the door, Eleanor's Legacy Financial Consulting. You look great," he said. "You look really happy." "I am," I replied simply. I'm trying to get back on my feet," he stammered, trying to straighten his posture, clutching the broom like a lifeline. "It's honest work. I'm paying off my debts. Slowly." "That's good, Gary. I'm glad to hear that." He hesitated. "Pamela reached out to me last week, wanted to know if I wanted to get a drink. She's living out of a trailer park now. And I told her to lose my number," Gary said, a flash of his old pride flickering in his eyes. "I might be broke, Brenda, but I'm not stupid anymore. She made me lose the best thing I ever had." He looked at me with puppy dog eyes, testing the waters, hoping for a crumb of sympathy. A smile, a casual invitation to catch up. I adjusted my scarf. "Well," I said, "it sounds like you learned a valuable lesson. It was an expensive education, Gary. I hope it was worth it." "Brenda," he took a step forward. "I have a meeting to get to." I cut him off smoothly. "Good luck with the sweeping, Gary. You missed a spot over there." I pointed to a stray wrapper on the ground, stepped right past him, and walked to my car without looking back. Checking my reflection in the rearview mirror, I wasn't the sad, abandoned wife anymore. I was the main character, and the main character doesn't look back at the extras. Yesterday I drove out to the cemetery. It was the 2-year anniversary of Mom's passing. The grounds are beautiful this time of year, with the maples turning brilliant shades of red and gold, dropping leaves like confetti onto the quiet headstones. I walked up to her plot, a simple grey granite marker that read, "Eleanor Miller, beloved mother, sharp mind, strong heart." I spread a blanket on the grass, sat down cross-legged, and set out 2 coffees from her favourite cafe. One for me, one by the stone. It might seem silly to talk to a piece of granite, but I knew she was listening. She was in the wind, the rustle of the leaves, and the backbone she gave me. "Hey, Mom," I said, taking a sip. "You'll never guess who I saw yesterday. Gary, he's sweeping streets now." I chuckled softly. "You were right. You were right about everything. You told me he was weak, and you told me Pamela was a parasite. I didn't want to hear it back then. I wanted to prove you wrong, and believe my love could change him." I traced the carved letters of her name. "But you didn't judge me, and you didn't say, 'I told you so.' You just built a parachute for the day I'd inevitably need it. With your own hands, every dollar you saved, and every smart investment you made, you wove that safety net. Satin." I reached into my bag and pulled out the latest financial report for Eleanor's legacy. "We helped 50 women this year, Mum. 50 women who were lied to, cheated on, and taken advantage of. We got them their settlements, and we got them their dignity back. And I'm doing it all in your name." The wind picked up, swirling the autumn leaves around me. A sudden wave of emotion hit me, not sadness, but a deep ache in your chest kind of gratitude. "Thank you," I whispered, tears warm on my cheeks. "Thank you for the strict clauses. Thank you for the lockout rules. Thank you for teaching me that being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who makes you feel lonely." Looking back at the last 2 years, the pain of that betrayal felt like a wildfire. It burned everything down to the ground. It was terrifying and destructive, but wildfires are part of nature for a reason. They clear out the deadwood, get rid of the decay, and make room for new growth. And looking at my life now, that growth is lush, green, and thriving. I have friends who love me for exactly who I am, a meaningful career, a home that feels like a sanctuary, and most importantly, I have myself. I stood up and brushed the grass off my coat. Enjoy the coffee, Mum. You earned it. Walking back to my car, I noticed a young woman sitting by a fresh grave a few rows down. She was sobbing, looking completely broken, lost, and terrified. She looked exactly the way I did 2 years ago. I paused, turned around, and walked over to her. "Excuse me," I said softly. She looked up, startled. "Yes?" I reached into my purse and handed her my business card for Eleanor's legacy. "I don't know what you're going through," I said gently, "but if you ever feel like you're drowning, call me. You are so much stronger than you think." The woman took the card, looked at it, and then looked back up at me, a tiny spark of hope flickering in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. I smiled. "Don't thank me. Thank Eleanor." I got into my car, a sensible, reliable luxury SUV, paid for fully in cash, and drove through the cemetery gates. My husband filed for divorce to be with my best friend, thinking he'd hit the jackpot, thinking he won. But he forgot the golden rule of the game. The house always wins. And my mother? She was the house.